The great hall of the Galactic Concord stretched for miles. Its ceiling disappeared into darkness, and floating lights drifted like lazy stars above the assembled delegates. 47 species had gathered here today. They came from worlds of ice and fire, from gas giants and ocean moons. They had ruled the galaxy for 12,000 years in peace, and today they would decide the fate of humanity. Ambassador stood alone at the center of the hall. He was 63 years old, with gray hair and tired eyes that had seen too much. Around him, thousands of alien faces watched from their elevated platforms. Some had scales. Others had feathers or fur or skin like polished metal. Many had no faces at all, just clusters of eyes or sensing organs that tracked his every breath. "The vote has been called," announced First Speaker X. She was a creature, tall and thin, with wings folded against her back. Her voice carried no emotion. "The matter before us is the human exclusion mandate. All in favor of removing humanity from conquered space, signal now." Watched as lights flickered across the hall, green for yes, red for no. The green lights spread like a disease, jumping from platform to platform. 44 species voted to expel humanity. Only 3 voted against. The hall fell silent. "The mandate passes," X said. "Humanity will be relocated beyond the veil within 5 standard years. The jump gates connecting human systems to conquered space will be destroyed. There will be no return." Had known this was coming. For months, he had watched the fear grow in the Conquered's eyes. Humans had joined the galactic community only 200 years ago, a blink of an eye compared to the elder species. But in that short time, humanity had spread across 300 worlds. They built faster than anyone thought possible. They invented technologies that took other species to develop. They bred quickly, adapted quickly, and changed everything they touched. The elder species called it creative destruction. Humans would arrive on a peaceful world, and within a generation, nothing looked the same. Old ways crumbled. New ideas spread like fire. The young of other species started asking dangerous questions. They wanted to change things. They wanted to be more like the humans. This terrified the conquered. Ambassador X said, "You may speak." Looked around the hall one last time. He memorized every face, every species that had voted to throw his people into the darkness. Then he spoke. 200 years ago we came to you with open hands. We asked only for friendship. You welcomed us, or so we thought. We shared our music, our art, our dreams. We worked beside you. We married your children. We called you family." He paused. The silence was heavy. "And now you throw us away because we grew too fast, because we asked too many questions, because we made you uncomfortable." He shook his head slowly. "We are not a disease. We are not a threat. We are simply different from you, and that difference frightened you more than any enemy ever could." A delegate from the X collective hissed from his platform. "You breed like insects. In another 1,000 years, you would outnumber us all." "And would that be so terrible?" asked quietly. "We never raised weapons against you. We never conquered your worlds. We only wanted to live beside you." "Your very existence conquers us," another delegate shouted. "Your ideas infect our young. Your way of life destroys our traditions. You change everything you touch." Smiled sadly. "Yes, we do. That is what it means to be human. We cannot look at the universe and leave it unchanged. We must build, create, dream, and grow. If that is a crime, then I suppose we are guilty." First Speaker X raised a limb for silence. "The vote is final, Ambassador. Do you have any last words before the mandate takes effect?" Looked at her. Among all the delegates, she was one of the 3 who had voted against expulsion. He saw something in her eyes that might have been regret, or perhaps it was fear of a different kind. "Only this," he said. "You have made your choice, remember it." He turned and walked toward the great doors. Behind him, delegates began to celebrate. They embraced each other, congratulating themselves on their wisdom. They had saved the galaxy from the human plague. The future was safe. X did not celebrate. She watched the human ambassador disappear through the doors, and a cold feeling settled in her chest. She had studied humans for decades. She knew something that her fellow delegates had forgotten. Humans were never more dangerous than when they had nothing left to lose. The expulsion took 5 years. 890 billion humans were forced from their homes. Colony ships filled with families, with children, with the elderly and sick. They were herded toward the Veil, a vast region of unexplored space that the conquered had declared uninhabitable. Ancient surveys showed only dead worlds, radiation storms, and gravitational anomalies that would tear ships apart. The conquered expected humanity to die out there. Some humans resisted. There were protests, riots, even a few desperate battles. But humanity's military was small compared to the combined might of 44 species. The resistors were crushed. The rest went quietly, filing into their ships with silent faces and hollow eyes. On the last day stood at the final jump gate. Behind him, the last convoy of human ships waited. Ahead, the veil stretched like a wall of darkness, hiding whatever fate awaited his people. A conquered official approached him. "The gate will be destroyed once you pass through. You understand there is no return." "I understand," said. "For what it is worth," the official said awkwardly, "I am sorry." Looked at him for a long moment. "No, you are relieved. There is a difference." He turned away and boarded the final ship. The convoy passed through the gate. Moments later, the gate exploded in a flash of light that could be seen across 3 systems. The connection was severed. Humanity was gone. In the great hall of the conquered, the delegates held a festival that lasted for a week. They sang songs of their victory. They praised their own wisdom. They looked toward a future of peace and stability, free from the chaos of human creativity. Only X stayed away from the celebrations. She sat alone in her chambers, staring at a hologram of Ambassador's final address. "You have made your choice," his voice repeated. "Remember it." She played it again and again, and each time the cold feeling in her chest grew stronger. The other delegates thought they had solved a problem. X knew better. They had created one. 50 years passed, and the galaxy had never been more peaceful. Trade flowed smoothly between the elder species. Wars had become a distant memory. The young no longer asked dangerous questions about change and progress. Everything was stable, orderly, and perfectly controlled. The conquered congratulated itself daily on its wisdom. Expelling the humans had been the right decision. First Speaker X was old now. Her wings had grown brittle and her eyes had dimmed. But her mind remained sharp, and the cold feeling in her chest had never faded. She spent her final years watching, waiting, listening for something that never came. Silence. That was what troubled her most. The veil was silent. The conquered had placed listening posts along the border, thousands of stations designed to detect any sign of human activity. For 50 years they had detected nothing. No distress signals. No colony beacons, no radio waves or energy signatures, nothing at all. The analysts were pleased. "The humans have perished," they reported to the council. "The veil was too harsh, they could not survive." The council accepted this explanation with relief. Dead humans were safe humans. The threat was finally over. But X remembered something she had read long ago in a human history book. "Beware the quiet enemy," it said. "The wolf that howls is easy to find. The wolf that waits in silence is the one that kills." She shared her concerns with the council, but they laughed at her. "You are old, First Speaker. You see ghosts in every shadow. The humans are gone. Let the past rest." So X let the matter drop, but she never stopped watching. While the politicians celebrated, the engineers began to worry. The Eth were a proud species known for their massive star lifters, machines that could harvest energy directly from suns. These machines had powered their civilization for 3,000 years. But 40 years ago, the old star lifters had begun to fail, and the ETH had hired human engineers to design new ones. The humans had built magnificent machines, elegant and efficient, with technology the ETH barely understood. At the time, it seemed like a blessing. The new star lifters worked perfectly. Now, with the humans gone, the machines were breaking down, and no one knew how to fix them. "The design makes no sense," the ETH chief engineer complained to the council. "There are components we cannot identify, circuits that follow no logic we recognize. The humans built these machines using intuition, not reason. We cannot replicate their work." Other species reported similar problems. Human-designed ships were failing. Human-built communication networks were developing errors that no one could correct. Human medical devices were breaking down with no replacements available. The Concord's mind studied these human creations, but they could not understand them. Human engineering was not based on careful planning and logical steps. It was wild, creative, and often contradictory. Humans would solve problems in ways that seemed impossible, using methods that should not work but somehow did. Without humans to maintain their own creations, those creations slowly died. The council dismissed these concerns as minor inconveniences. "We will develop our own solutions," they declared. "We do not need human cleverness. We have survived for 12,000 years without them." But privately, some began to wonder how much of their recent prosperity had depended on human innovation. How many problems had humans quietly solved while the elder species looked down on them? These questions were never asked aloud. They were too uncomfortable. In her private chambers, the elderly X received a visitor. He was a young officer from the Border Patrol, nervous and pale. "First speaker," he said, bowing low, "I have a report that I do not know how to explain." "Speak," X said. The officer placed a data crystal on her desk. "3 days ago, we sent a probe beyond the veil, standard reconnaissance. We wanted to confirm that the human colonies had failed. And the probe detected something." The officer's voice trembled. "An energy signature, massive, larger than anything we have ever recorded. Then the probe stopped. Stopped. It did not malfunction. It did not lose power. It simply ceased to exist. One moment it was transmitting. The next moment it was gone, as if something erased it." X stared at the data crystal. The cold feeling in her chest turned to ice. "Have you reported this to the council?" "No, first speaker. I came to you first. I remembered that you voted against the expulsion. I thought you should know." X was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached out and touched the young officer's hand. "You were right to come to me, but you must never speak of this to anyone else. Not yet." "Why not?" "Because the council does not want to know. They have convinced themselves that the humans are dead. This belief brings them comfort. If we challenge it now without more evidence, they will simply ignore us." She picked up the data crystal. "Let me investigate quietly. When I have answers, we will decide what to do." The officer bowed and left. Alone, X activated the crystal and watched the probe's final moments. She saw the darkness of the veil, the swirl of cosmic dust, and then something else, a flash of light, a shape that her mind could not quite process, and then nothing. "You are still there, aren't you?" she whispered to the empty room. "You did not die, you survived, and you have been building something in the darkness." She thought of Ambassador's final words. "You have made your choice, remember it." 50 years ago, the Conquered had thrown humanity into the void and expected them to perish. But X knew something her colleagues had forgotten. Humans did not die easily. They adapted. They overcame. They turned every obstacle into an opportunity. The Conquered had not killed humanity. They had unleashed it. Somewhere beyond the veil, in the vast silence that so comforted the council, something was growing, something patient, something vast. And X knew, with terrible certainty, that it would not stay hidden forever. She closed her eyes and prepared to wait. She was old and her time was running out, but she hoped to live long enough to see the truth revealed. When humans were quiet, that was when you should be most afraid. The silence would not last forever. 75 years after the expulsion, the galaxy learned what true fear felt like. It began with silence. Worlds along the galactic core stopped responding to communications. Trade ships disappeared without distress signals. Patrol fleets sent to investigate never returned. For weeks, the conquered debated what was happening. Some blamed pirates. Others suspected a new disease. A few whispered about ancient legends, stories so old that most species had forgotten them. Then the came. They poured out of the galactic core like a tide of darkness. Massive ships, each one the size of a moon, drifting through space with terrible patience. They did not communicate. They did not negotiate. They simply consumed. Every world they touched was stripped bare. Every species they encountered was devoured. They were hunger given form, death made manifest. The Conquered's founders had faced the 12,000 years ago. That war had nearly destroyed everything. Only by uniting all species, by sacrificing billions of lives, had they managed to drive the into dormancy. The survivors had built the Conquered to ensure peace, hoping the ancient enemy would never wake again. That hope was now ashes. 17 systems fell in the first month. The Conquered's fleets designed for peacekeeping and deterrence were shattered like glass against stone. The elegant weapons of the elder species perfected over barely scratched the hulls. Nothing worked. Nothing slowed them down. Panic spread faster than the invasion itself. Species that had cooperated for thousands of years turned on each other. Some fled to distant colonies. Others surrendered, hoping that would spare them. They were consumed just like everyone else. First Speaker X watched the chaos from her command center on the Conquered's capital world. She was ancient now, kept alive by machines that pumped chemicals through her withered body. Her wings had crumbled to dust long ago, but her mind remained clear, and her eyes still burned with purpose. Around her, the new council members argued and screamed. They blamed each other. They demanded solutions. They prayed to gods who did not answer. "Enough," X said. Her voice was weak, but something in it silenced the room. "We have one option left," she continued. "One chance to survive." "What option?" a delegate demanded. "Our fleets are destroyed. Our weapons are useless. What can possibly save us now?" X looked at him with ancient eyes. "The humans." The room erupted. "Impossible," one delegate shouted. "They are dead. The Veil killed them decades ago." "Even if they survived," another argued, "why would they help us? We threw them away like garbage." "They would let us burn," a third spat. "We deserve nothing from them." X waited for the noise to fade. Then she spoke again. 25 years ago, I sent a probe beyond the Veil. It detected an energy signature larger than anything we have ever recorded. Then it was destroyed." She paused. "I have kept this secret for 25 years, waiting for the right moment. That moment is now." The delegates stared at her in shock. "The humans are not dead," X said. "They are out there beyond the Veil and they have built something. I do not know what, but it is our only hope." "You cannot be serious," the ex-delegate hissed. "You want us to beg the humans for help, after everything we did to them." "Yes," X said simply. "I want us to beg. I want us to crawl on our bellies and plead for their mercy, because the alternative is extinction." The room fell silent. Outside, through the crystal windows, they could see distant flashes of light. They were getting closer. Another world had just died. "I will lead the expedition myself," X said. "I will take a small fleet beyond the Veil and find the humans. If they refuse to help, then we are no worse than before. But if they agree—" She left the thought unfinished. No one argued. There was nothing left to argue about. 3 days later, a fleet of 12 ships departed for the Veil. They were crewed by volunteers, individuals who had nothing left to lose. Some had lost families to the Others simply wanted to see what humanity had become. All of them knew they might never return. X sat in the command chair of the lead ship, her fragile body wrapped in a life support suit. Around her, the crew worked in nervous silence. No one knew what waited beyond the veil. The ancient surveys said only death and darkness, but those surveys were made before humans were sent there. Humans had a way of changing things. The fleet reached the veil's edge and paused. Before them, the wall of darkness stretched endlessly in all directions. It was not truly dark, X knew. It was simply unknown, uncharted, a place where the conquered's knowledge ended. "Take us through," she ordered. The ships entered the veil. For hours, they traveled through swirling dust and radiation storms. Their sensors were nearly useless. Navigation was done by instinct and prayer. Several times, they nearly collided with debris or wandered into gravitational wells that would have crushed them. Then suddenly, the darkness cleared. The fleet emerged on the other side of the veil, and every being on every ship fell silent. Before them stretched a civilization. Massive structures floated in the void, each one larger than anything the conquered had ever built. Ships moved between them, thousands of ships, millions of ships, in patterns of perfect coordination. Stars burned with artificial brightness, their energy harvested by rings of collectors that physics. Planets had been moved, arranged in precise formations, their surfaces covered with gleaming cities. It was impossible, it was beautiful, it was terrifying. "By the ancient stars," the captain whispered, "they did not just survive, they thrived." X stared at the impossible sight, and for the first time in decades, she felt something like hope. Then a voice crackled through their communications. "Conquered vessels, you are trespassing in human dominion space. State your purpose or be destroyed. You have 60 seconds to respond." X leaned forward and activated her transmitter. "This is First Speaker X of the Galactic Conquered. We come seeking help. They have awakened. Our worlds are burning. She paused, swallowing her pride. "We are begging for your mercy." The silence that followed lasted longer than 60 seconds, but no weapons fired. Finally, a different voice spoke, younger, harder, cold as the void itself. "Proceed to coordinates being transmitted now. Admiral will see you." The name struck X like a physical blow. The same name as the ambassador who had spoken those final words 75 years ago. "Remember it," he had said. X closed her eyes. They had remembered, and now humanity would show them exactly what that meant. The conquered delegation was escorted to a station orbiting a star that should not exist. It was too bright, too stable, too perfect. Human engineers had built it from nothing, creating a sun where there had only been darkness. X looked out the viewing port and struggled to comprehend what she was seeing. In 75 years, humanity had not merely survived the veil. They had conquered it. They had taken a wasteland and turned it into a paradise. The station itself was a work of art. Its corridors were wide and clean, filled with humans who moved with purpose and confidence. They wore uniforms of deep blue and silver, and their faces held expressions that X had never seen before. Not anger, not hatred, something worse. Indifference. The humans looked at the conquered delegates as one might look at insects. Curiosity, perhaps, but no real interest. The elder species had once ruled the galaxy. Here, they were nothing. The delegation was led to a great hall that reminded X painfully of the Conquered's own assembly chamber. At the far end, on a raised platform, sat a human woman in an admiral's uniform. She was perhaps 50 years old, with dark skin and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Admiral," an aide announced, "granddaughter of ambassador, commander of the human dominion's military forces." X felt her heart sink. She had hoped for strangers. Strangers might show mercy. But this woman carried 75 years of history in her blood. Her grandfather had been the last human to address the conquered, the man who had warned them to remember their choice. First Speaker X, Admiral said. Her voice was calm, controlled, utterly without warmth. I am told you come begging for help. We do, X admitted. She had no pride left. Pride was a luxury for species that were not facing extinction. They have awakened. They are destroying everything. Our fleets are shattered. Our weapons are useless. Without help, we will be consumed. Yes, the Admiral said, we know. X blinked, you know. We have been monitoring the conquered space for decades. We watched them emerge. We tracked their advance. We know exactly how many worlds they have consumed and how many more will fall. Then you know we are desperate. I know you are dying. The Admiral leaned forward slightly. What I do not know is why I should care. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. 75 years ago, the Admiral continued, the conquered voted to expel humanity. 44 species declared that we were a threat to galactic stability. You sent 800 billion people into the void and destroyed the gates behind us. You expected us to die. I voted against expulsion, X said quietly. I was one of 3. I know. That is the only reason you are alive right now. The Admiral's eyes were cold. But your vote did not save us. Your conscience did not feed our children or protect our colonies. While you sat safely in your chambers, my people were fighting for survival in a wasteland that your scientists said would kill us in a generation. We were wrong, X admitted. About everything. We were afraid of what humanity represented. We chose to destroy you rather than accept that you were different. You chose to murder us, the Admiral corrected. Let us use honest words, First Speaker. The conquered attempted genocide. You failed only because you underestimated us. X had no response. My grandfather was 43 when he led our people through the veil, the Admiral said. He is still alive. 140 years old, preserved by technologies we developed after you threw us away. Would you like to know what he says about the conquered? Yes. He says nothing. The Admiral's expression did not change. He refuses to speak about you at all. He says the conquered stopped existing the day they voted to expel us. To him, you are ghosts, memories of a past that no longer matters. X closed her eyes. Then there is no hope. I did not say that. The old opened her eyes again. My grandfather leads a faction within the Dominion that argues for restraint, the Admiral said. He believes that vengeance is beneath us, that we should not let the conquered's cruelty define who we become. He wants humanity to be better than our enemies. And what do you believe? The Admiral was quiet for a long moment. I believe that you cast us out like vermin. I believe that you wished us dead. I believe that you deserve nothing from us. She paused. But I also believe that my grandfather is right. Vengeance is a poison. If we let ourselves hate you, we become no better than the species that tried to destroy us. X held her breath. Go home, First Speaker, the Admiral said. Tell your council that the human dominion has heard their plea. Tell them that we will discuss this matter among ourselves. But do not expect miracles. Do not expect forgiveness. If we choose to help, it will be for our own reasons, not for yours. How long will you take to decide? As long as we need. The Admiral rose from her seat. In the meantime, try not to let them consume your entire civilization. It would make our discussion rather pointless. The delegation was escorted back to their ships. As they prepared to depart, X looked back at the impossible civilization that humanity had built. 75 years ago, the conquered had thrown away 800 billion people because they were afraid of change. Those people had taken that fear and transformed it into something magnificent. They had built a new world in the darkness, a testament to everything that made humans terrifying. Not their weapons, not their numbers, not their aggression. Their refusal to surrender, their ability to turn suffering into strength, their capacity to look at the impossible and say, we can do better. The conquered had tried to destroy humanity. Instead, they had forged it into something greater. As her ship passed back through the veil, X found herself praying, not to the ancient gods of her people, but to something newer, something she had never believed in before. Hoping. She prayed that humanity would choose mercy over vengeance. She prayed that the better angels of their nature would prevail. She prayed that somehow, despite everything the conquered had done, the humans would find it in themselves to help. It was a fragile prayer, a desperate prayer, but it was all she had left. Behind her, in the vast civilization beyond the veil, a debate was beginning, a debate that would determine the fate of the galaxy. And at the center of that debate stood an old man of 140 years, who remembered what it felt like to be thrown away, and who still believed that compassion was the greatest strength of all. The reached the conquered's core, worlds on a day that would be remembered forever. 300 ships, each one the size of a small moon, descended upon the capital system. The remaining conquered fleets threw themselves against the invaders in a desperate final stand. They were swept aside like dust before a storm. Within hours, the defensive lines collapsed. The path to the lay open. On the capital planet, billions of beings watched the sky and waited to die. First Speaker X sat in her chamber, her ancient body failing at last. The machines could no longer keep her alive. She had hours remaining, perhaps less. She had returned from the veil with a fragile hope, but the human dominion had not responded. Days had passed, then weeks. Now they were here, and there would be no more waiting. With trembling limbs, she activated a broadcast that would reach every corner of conquered space. Her final words, she decided, a confession and an apology for whatever it was worth. "People of the conquered," she said, her voice thin and weak. "This is First Speaker X. I speak to you now as our civilization faces its end." Across 1,000 worlds, beings stopped to listen. Some huddled in shelters. Others stood in open plazas, watching the darkness descend. All of them heard the old words. 75 years ago, we made a choice. We expelled humanity because we feared them. We threw away 800 billion souls because they were different from us, because they made us uncomfortable, because they challenged our comfortable certainties. She paused, struggling to breathe. We were wrong, we were cowards, and now we face the consequences of our cowardice. In the sky above, the ships began their final approach. "If any humans are listening," X continued, "I do not ask for your help. I have no right to ask anything of you. But I want you to know that I am sorry, that some of us understood our crime even as we committed it, that we remember your ambassador's final words." She closed her eyes. "You told us to remember our choice. We do. We remember, and we are ashamed." The broadcast ended. X slumped in her chair, exhausted. Outside her window, she could see the ships blocking out the stars. It was almost beautiful in a terrible way. And then something happened. A flash of light, then another, then 1,000 more, blooming across the sky like flowers made of fire. Ships emerged from nowhere, vessels of impossible design, weapons blazing with energies that the conquered had never imagined. Human ships. 1,000 warships tore through the void, striking the formation with surgical precision. Where conquered weapons had bounced off the ancient enemy's hulls, human weapons burned through like fire through paper. Explosions rippled across the fleet. For the first time in 75 years, the devourers felt pain. On the capital planet, beings wept with shock and joy. They did not understand what was happening. They only knew that death had been delayed. Aboard the lead human vessel, Admiral commanded her fleet with cold efficiency. Beside her, strapped into a command chair modified for his frail body, sat her grandfather. Was 140 years old. His hair was white, his skin papery thin, but his eyes still burned with the fire that had carried humanity through the darkness. "Grandfather," said quietly, never taking her eyes from the battle display, Are you certain about this? The old man nodded slowly. I have thought about this moment for 75 years. What would I do if given the chance to face those who threw us away? Would I hate them? Would I let them burn? And I realized that the answer had nothing to do with them. It had to do with us, with who we choose to be. He reached out and touched his granddaughter's hand. We are human. We feel anger, hatred, the desire for revenge. These are natural emotions, but we also feel compassion, mercy, and love. The question is which emotions we allow to guide our actions. Watched as her ships tore through the formation. They were winning. Against an enemy that had consumed 17 systems, humanity was winning. They wished us dead, she said. Yes. They deserve nothing from us. Perhaps, smiled sadly. But we do not help them because they deserve it. We help them because helping is what we do, because mercy is not weakness, because the greatest victory is not destroying our enemies but proving that their cruelty could not destroy who we are. The battle raged for hours. Human ships danced around striking and retreating, exploiting weaknesses that the conquered had never found. The ancient enemy, so unstoppable against the elder species, was being systematically dismantled. Finally, the last vessel turned and fled back toward the galactic core. They were not destroyed, merely wounded. They would return someday, but not today. Today, the galaxy was saved. Admiral's face appeared on every screen in conquered space. Behind her, through the bridge windows, the survivors could see human ships maintaining formation, ready to fight again if needed. This is Admiral of the Human Dominion, she announced. They have been driven back. Your worlds are safe, for now. She paused and her expression hardened. Do not mistake this for forgiveness. We did not save you because we have forgotten what you did to us. We saved you because it was the right thing to do, because innocent lives were at stake, because we refused to become the monsters you tried to make us. Across 1,000 worlds, beings held their breath. The conquered as you knew it is over, the Admiral continued. You are no longer the rulers of this galaxy. If you wish to survive, you will need to change. You will need to accept that other species have value, even if they are different from you. You will need to learn the lessons that you refused to learn 75 years ago. She leaned forward slightly. We are offering you a place at our table, not as rulers but as equals, not as masters but as partners. The choice is yours, but know this, we will be watching, and we will remember. The broadcast ended. In her chamber, first speaker X laughed softly. It hurt to laugh, but she could not help herself. The humans had done exactly what she had hoped. They had proven that they were better than their oppressors. They had answered cruelty with mercy, hatred with compassion. She activated her communicator one final time. Ambassador, she said, not knowing if the old man was listening. I do not know if you remember me. I was one of 3 who voted against your expulsion. I have spent 75 years regretting that I could not do more. Silence. Then a voice, old and tired but still strong. I remember you, first speaker. You argued for hours, trying to change minds that were already closed. I saw you weeping when the vote was announced. X felt tears forming in her own ancient eyes. I am glad you survived, she said. I am glad you became something magnificent, and I am sorry for everything. I know, said gently. Rest now, old friend, your work is done. X closed her eyes for the last time. Above her, through the window, she could see human ships patrolling the sky. Protectors, not conquerors. Guardians, not enemies. The galaxy would never be the same. The old order had crumbled. The elder species would have to learn humility. Humanity would lead them into an uncertain future. But it was a future. That was more than anyone had dared to hope for. Far away, on a memorial station orbiting a star that humans had built from nothing, stood before a wall of names. 890 billion people had been expelled from conquered space. Not all of them had survived the journey. This wall remembered those who had been lost. His granddaughter joined him, her uniform still bearing the marks of battle. "They will never truly understand us," said quietly. "The conquered, I mean. They will never understand why we helped them." Nodded slowly. "No, perhaps they will not." "Then why do we do it? Why show mercy to those who showed us none?" The old man touched the wall, his fingers tracing names of friends long dead. "Because we do not do what is right because others understand," he said. "We do it because we are human, because compassion is not weakness, because mercy is not surrender, because the greatest victory is proving that cruelty cannot corrupt our souls." He turned to his granddaughter and smiled. "They tried to destroy us. They failed. They tried to make us monsters. They failed at that too. And now, when they had no right to expect anything from us, we saved them anyway." He looked up at the stars, the vast civilization that humanity had built in the darkness. "That is what it means to be human. That is what follows, not vengeance, not hatred, but the unshakable belief that we can always, always choose to be better." Nodded slowly. She did not fully agree with her grandfather. Part of her still burned with old anger, but she understood. The galaxy had cast humanity into the void, and humanity had risen from that void as something greater than anyone had imagined. Not conquerors, not destroyers, but builders, healers, guardians. This was what followed. This was what humanity had become. And it was only the beginning.